Welcome back to another episode of Flipping Tables. I'm your boy Javier. This is your other boy, youth pastor, and aka Fern, aka a bunch of other stuff, Fernando. We want to just keep talking about the music topic. We did a poll on our Instagram, and I personally was surprised a little bit about how the ratings went.
The numbers, yep.
But that's okay though. I think I appreciate at least people being honest, and answering. Yeah, yep. Exactly. And answering honestly. Like if you're still in church and you still listen to secular music, I appreciate you being honest about it. Right. So we want to continue talking about it because it's obviously a huge topic. It's a very important topic. We've made it clear that it's a big topic for us. Music is part of my daily life. So, we want to expand on I guess more than anything, how it affects us, maybe the dangers of it too, if there's any, or if you personally feel like you're okay with listening to whatever and nothing will affect you. But we really want to, I guess, expand on that and try to wrap it up as much as we can, right?
Right. To kind of bring it together and one, obviously make everyone aware that we're not bringing this to like say, oh, you're going to hell. This is not about condemning anybody, right?
Nobody, yeah.
There's none of that. It's really just more of like, hey, let's be aware of our surroundings and let's be aware of what we're actually living in the days that we're in, right? Because it's more important about how this, at the end of the day, this is all about personal salvation, right? It's an individual thing.
Yeah.
I can't save you. You can't save me. Right. I can't save my kids. I can't save my wife. I can encourage everyone around me.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not out here to impose anything on anyone. If anything, it's just to expose the truth. And that's really what we're exactly for. One of the biggest things that I wanted to touch base on today was how all of this actually affects our soul, right? And what this actually does in the sense of the way that music in general is going to affect and it's going to incite a lot of different things in us, right? One of I have a few that I put on the list here. One of is our emotions, right? And I'm gonna go through the list, but I don't want to necessarily dismiss any of them, right? Our emotions, the way that our emotions can fluctuate back and forth, based on what we're listening to, based on the way that, based on what we listen to, right? That's gonna be one of them. But it also incites the memories when things triggered, and we kind of mentioned that last time. When you listen to a song, you're just kind of like, ooh, snap! That brings me back, right? That's one of them. The movements, which I think it's an important one that I want to touch on today, right?
Yeah.
How it, just like we're in church, we clap to music, right? Some folks just tap their feet. Some people dance, they jump, they throw their hands up, whatever it might be. But it causes you to move. And also, and we'll talk more about it later on, right? And how you dance, the types of different dances and how we get into that. We want to talk about creativity. There's a lot of people who, when they hear music, it allows them to express themselves, right? Starts talking about how your mental state just really changes and it opens up and all that stuff. You have, I mentioned it, emotion is, but the mood swings. How one song, you can be feeling really good about song 1, 2, and 3 that's on your playlist. All of a sudden, song 4 on your playlist comes around and all of a sudden it's like, brings you down. Right? 3 songs in, you're feeling down. 7 and 8 comes up and you're pumped up again. And you can go back and forth like a roller coaster feeling on your moods, right? So the mood swings is one of them. A lot of people use music for motivation, and we touched base on that the last time, right? So we don't have to dive into that one too much. But the fact that music can motivate you to do what you're supposed to do what you're called to do type of thing. And then we talk a lot, at least for me, I want to talk about cultural identity. You know, how the music that you listen to, people tend to identify with a specific culture based on the genres, based on what you're looking at. And it plays a significant role in shaping our identity, whether we want to admit it or not. Right. Sometimes the way that you carry yourself when you're listening to music, you step out into the real world and you start speaking the way that it's on the music. You start addressing people the way that people are addressing the music and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I think it's key. I mean, we can touch on the first few ones, right? The emotions and everything. Like you said, it and we can tie that into mood swings. Obviously, the choice of music, like I mentioned in the other ones, where if I'm gonna go play a certain sport, I'm gonna go ball, I'm gonna go play some football or even soccer or whatever, right? I'm gonna go do a physical activity. My mentality was I need to win. I'm trying to win. So the music that I'm gonna listen to is gonna hype me up.
Yep.
It's gonna put me in a mind state of like I need to destroy this other team. Even if you're on the other team and you're my boy, like in between these lines, you're on the opposite team.
Yep.
Right? I'm trying to beat you. So the music had to get me there. Or if you're like, you know, you might be feeling a certain type of way and you're trying to be lovey-dovey, you might listen to something else, right? Because you want to set the mood.
Yep.
Even, right? If you have a romantic partner, you set like
call it what it is, man. Baby make music. You know what I'm saying? Like
you're not gonna put like
trap, features there
gangster trap. You know what I mean? You're not gonna put no gangster trap.
Facts.
You know, it's just the reality, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't go together. So, it does. If you want to, you know, try to say no, music is just music, or it kind of depends on the artist or it depends on the genre. It doesn't affect me. No, let's be honest, it does. That's why there's different types of genres of music. That's why there's different tempos and a whole bunch of artists, because they persuade you, they influence your emotions, your behaviors, like you were touching on, right? The way you treat people, how you start seeing people even. And we have to be, you know, at a certain point, we have to be honest, right? I had to be honest with myself and be like, is this beneficial for me? You know, is it actually hindering me from getting to the next level, spiritually speaking?
Yep.
Right. Because if it is helping me, then why not keep listening to it? Why stop? But if it's not benefiting me, you know, I have to sit and be like, all right, what's really holding me back, or why don't I feel like I'm growing spiritually or closer to God? So you have to, you know, analyze every single part of your life. It's not just, music and that's it.
Yeah.
Was I praying enough? Was I reading the Bible enough? You know, was I being intentional with my time? So we have to really analyze that. And I encourage, again, we encourage people. I'm not here to judge nobody or condemn nobody because I don't have the power to do that. But I really encourage you guys, if you guys want to go to the next level in your spiritual life, really analyze, like, does secular music really affect me? I mean, and again, we did the poll, right? And it was pretty close. It was almost 50-50, if I'm being honest. I think it was.
I'll pull it up. It's 58-42.
Yeah.
Where everyone's like, well, it depends.
It depends, right? So the you know, I was like, I thought it was going to be a bigger difference, but it's all right. You know what I mean?
I was surprised to see some of my close friends.
Oh, you could
on that 42. I was like,
you had access to see.
But the thing is like this, like, right at the end of the day, it's like sometimes we know this, you know, but the truth of the matter is that in the moment you're not thinking about it.
Yeah,
and that's the point that we're trying to make about this music. It's when you listen to a song and you start moving to it, and like we mentioned, right? If you're with your wife and it's that you're about to go to, it's late night, let's just call it that, right? So we don't get too explicit, but it's just late night. You're not gonna put on music and start pop locking with everybody. You just don't do that, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not the nature of it, right? Who's gonna start pop locking, break dancing in the middle of it? Like, that's
you're gonna
not
find that
go-to.
very attractive. Yeah.
Now, if you're slow dancing, or even if it's not slow, right? But like all of this, you see a lot of music, especially in Spanish culture, where it's a lot of dancing, a lot of hip moving, a lot of all that. You know, it's very like it's a erotic dance.
Yeah, it's provocative.
It's very provocative. You know, and for the way that we've learned through church, right, to our teachers, is like women. If you're gonna win a woman's heart, it's gonna be through her ears. Not so much about how you do and what you move and the way you look. It's not so much of that. But men, they get distracted easily through their sights, right? So when you're in that movement of just, I like this music because it's the nice beat. Let's call it what it is. These girls are out there and they're very erotic when they're moving, and it's something that's captivating.
Right. So
part of you wants to be in the middle of that. You want to be holding on to those girls. You want to be dancing with them. Why? Because it's something that's it's going to arouse whether it's your emotions or your physical
Yeah.
being, or whether it's just your mind,
Mhm.
it's arousing.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Let's call it what it is. The reality is that there's a lot of motivation behind your music choice.
Yeah.
And when it comes to it, you think about just the movement itself. But I said it lightly earlier when I was like, oh, sometimes you just tap your foot. It doesn't mean that you don't want to do something different, right? When you're at church, and we've heard a lot of people express this, that sometimes you come to church and you're stuck on the chair. You want to praise God. You know that God is worthy of praise and worship, but you're stuck in your seat and you can't move.
Mhm.
You can't lift up your hands. You can't even stand up. You can't even tap your foot. Why? Because something is holding you back. And whether it's consciously or subconsciously, sometimes you don't feel worthy of even praising God.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's gets to the point where the enemy wants to shame you because of what you listen to, because he wants to shame you of what
Yeah.
you're thinking, of what those desires are going. But it's really just your shame that's holding you down, because at the end of the day, if you really think about it, God doesn't stop being God. And it's not like he's less worthy of any
Yeah.
praise or worship just because you're not following through on what you're called to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Like yeah. I mean, and I actually saw a video on that where it was a little bit of a different topic, but the
Yeah.
guy was saying pretty much that every time he messes up, what he does is he runs back to God, right? Because God is still your father,
Facts.
right? He's not going to, I mean, there's consequences, etc. But he's not just going to be like, okay, you're not my son anymore. You keep messing up, I don't forgive you. You know,
Yeah.
he's not going to do that. He has unconditional love for us, right? Going back to the whole movement and everything like that. I mean, it's true, bro. I mean, why else would you go to the club?
Exactly.
Are you gonna go to the club because of the songs that they're gonna play? Not really. You're gonna go there because you're gonna go see girls, or if you're a girl, you're gonna go see guys, whatever, right? And you're gonna dance with somebody new, and that leads to other things,
Yeah.
right? Then we talk about the hookup culture, etc., right? And we might get into that a little bit more too. But um, if it was just about music, you listen to it in your room
Yeah.
or listen to it in the car or whatever. But there's a different motivation. Like the music that you're gonna listen to the gym when you go to the gym might not be the same one that you're gonna listen to um, when you're showering, or if when you're at work, or you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
there's different motivation. Um, so we gotta be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Does what I was gonna say about the whole um, poll thing was that we gotta be honest with ourselves. Does it really affect us, but we just don't want to give it up? Or, are we really like untouchable? And we're like, nah, nothing really affects us. I think I can keep listening to this. For me, it was the first one, right? It was more like, I really like this artist. I really like this song. Or I just like this genre. Like, I can't give it up.
Yeah.
That was just the reality. Right. So I think, again, to each their own. But that's just kind of my tip, right? My suggestion. Really just acknowledge and be like, yeah, I think it's just I can give it up, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Or I
Kinda
should
like,
give it up, but I don't want to.
like keeping it real with yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because at the end of the day, you're just lying to yourself and you're stopping yourself
Mm-hmm.
from being able to sometimes even achieve your goals when it comes to a spiritual aspect.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because one of the conversations that I've had a lot with the youth recently is that sometimes we all get excited about, oh, my calling, finding my purpose, and doing this. But when it comes to falling in love with the process of how to get there,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm not sure I want to give this part up. I'm
Mhm.
not sure I can give that part up. So it's like, we see it, we're aware of it, we're taught, but being able to apply it to ourselves, keeping it real with ourselves. You know, one thing that comes up to, like, based on the notes that I have here, like, especially when it comes to this movements and the dancing and the way that your mind just kind of changes, it opens up room for sexual desire, it opens that up, right? In Solomon, in the book of Song of Songs, right? It's one of the most explicit books in the Bible, right? When it comes to him describing his girl and all this other stuff. Towards the end of the book, in chapter 8, he's the one who says, and I'm just paraphrasing here, right? Towards the end of the fourth verse in chapter 8, he says, don't excite love, Don't stir it up until the time is ripe and you are ready.
Mm-hmm.
And we came across this, the video that we were talking about discussing earlier, right? Where this guy is coming out and saying, hey, you wouldn't watch a pornographic video in front of a child, right?
Or out in public, right?
Or out in the public. You wouldn't be watching porn out there.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you walk around listening to music that's very explicit, you know, and you bump it and you turn the radio up and it's describing all the actions. It's describing all the cheeks and elbows and everything. Mm-hmm. Somehow you think it's okay to put that out there to allow little kids to listen to that, kids that are underage to listen to that, but you wouldn't show the physical part of it. He's like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
So when you guys shared that, I was like, dang, it's crazy how sometimes we tend to ignore it just because it's not a visual thing, you know? But when he's giving this advice to the girls where it says, hey, don't excite the love, don't stir it up until the time is ripe and you are ready, he's giving that advice to the girls. Right. And here's a guy who I'm not even sure he was Christian or not. Right. He's just putting that out there. Yeah. It's not someone who's saying, oh, let's keep it Christian and keep it holy. It wasn't that. He was just standing up for kids themselves. Yeah. Right. But you're willing to put all this stuff out there. What do you think that does to little girls when you're putting it out there? Right. When the music is all, I mean, I'm not trying to throw any artists out there, but a lot of the music that's been coming out the last couple of years, very explicit. Mm-hmm. It's it has promoted women to keep a body count, yeah, and to boast about their body count like it's a good thing. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like, when did
it opens a lot. Again, it opens doors to a lot of other stuff. Yeah, we already know it opens doors to like drug abuse and being sexual and things like that. But like, it even goes to as far as like, oh, look at the girls on the music videos. Yep. They're all curvy and they have big this and big that. Now, the girls that aren't naturally like that want to go get operated on to look like that. Yeah. You know, and now everybody, like, to be honest, I don't have a statistic, but I'm pretty sure like a lot of the girls now are operated on. They probably get their bottom done, they probably get their top done just to look a certain way. Yeah. And you can't tell me they're just born like, oh, when I grow up, I'm gonna do this. No, they were influenced by what along they saw. The way. Yeah. So we gotta be very, very, very careful, you know.
And this kind of goes back and forth because from this alone, we can go into so many different ways, right? When you start to have a lot of sexual immorality, and it happens even in the Christian homes, you know what I'm saying? When you start having a lot of sexual immorality, it gets to the point where people start getting knocked up, having kids left and right. So for those who don't have the fear of God, or for those who are okay with abortion, right? Now that becomes your only outlet. Mm. So just the how music can incite you to act on emotions and then act on the physical, and all of a sudden when you're trapped, you're like, oh snap, well, let me find a way out, and boom, now I'm going towards abortion now. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, mm-hmm. it's a whole, like, man, we could sit here and talk about so many different directions that they can go, right? Today we want to focus on the music part and how it opens doors to all these other things. But for me, when I'm thinking about this type of stuff, it's like, let's not lie to ourselves and continue to say that it doesn't play a factor and that it's okay. I believe that the Holy Spirit at a certain point is going to talk to you and speak to you and work with you, but you also have to be willing and able to make those changes. Yeah. You know, because sometimes God speaks to us in different ways. You know, it's not always going to be a audible voice in your ear. It's not always going to be through your parents or a voice. Sometimes it's a friend. Sometimes it could be just the messages that are being put out there, right? But sometimes we tend to ignore them just because we think that we know better. We think that we can get away with a lot of different things. But we see through scripture that there's a lot of people who at one point believed, oh, I got this, I can take care of this, and ended up, face planting.
Yeah. I think, again, you got to be willing and able to change, but really like, pay attention to the lyrics, not just the rhythm, right? You can go, don't even listen to
the slow easing things, but some of these things are very direct.
Yeah, very direct, right? I know you had or we had discussed a few songs, even in the direct messages, like you talked about the guy, right? That was, and the guy again wasn't Christian, but he's talking to, it was on another podcast, and he's like, if you wouldn't watch X-rated movies, why would you be listening and blasting this song? that's talking about a lot of sexual
Literally,
act,
yep.
right? Um, and then you also have like the songs that are have subliminal messages in them, right? Where you know what they're talking about, but they're not saying it
Yeah, directly.
directly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the examples and if you guys want to look it up, but it's is this pastor, his name is Craig Lewis, and he did a whole like series on hip hop in church, like at his church, and he pretty much talked about Jay-Z. And let's be honest, like Jay-Z is pretty controversial, right?
Yeah.
Everybody says he's Illuminati and he always throws up the rock, and so, and he's one of the richest and one of the most influential rappers
Out there, yep.
right? So um he made a song and he played it backwards, and they played it backwards, and it sounds like it says 666 murder murder Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of times if you listen to a regular song, you don't hear it. But he was saying how we're so smart that our brain is able to interpret those subliminal messages. So
Yeah.
he's like, once your brain receives it, it's able to translate it, and you understand what it's saying, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
So that's a little harder because who has the
time to be
spinning right, exactly. So we don't have the time, but somebody did figure it out. And I know with technology now it's all crazy and you can alter anything, but like this is 15 plus years ago that he did this.
And it's crazy because like people who are going to be listening to this, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I heard about that. But even though you heard about it, you're still listening to music, and I'm not just saying you, like there's a lot of us who have gone through it. You know what I'm saying? I've heard about this stuff before I even started coming to church and giving my life to God and all that stuff. I had already heard about these type of things. You going way back to like songs like AC/DC and stuff like that, like rock music and all this other stuff. Before it was just rock music, they do this stuff, and you put it backwards and the whole things, and you saw how people would turn the disc and everything. It was a very common thing for you to hear about, there's subliminal messages. Nowadays, nobody talks about that because there's no more records to spin. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, I don't think no one's changing their ways. If it ain't broke, they're not going to fix it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And then another example was my brother was actually telling me about this this Kendrick song that is actually it's called For Sale, right? And so he references somebody named Lucy in the song. But as I was reading the lyrics and we were reading the lyrics, to me it sounds like he's talking about Lucifer.
Yeah.
But he gives it a nickname, and because he talks a lot about just the opening line, my name is Lucy. You introduced me, Kendrick. Right? So I'm like, I was just thinking like, man, like Lucifer needs an introduction, like into, because we're God's children.
Yep.
So the only way he's gonna get in front of you is he needs an introduction. You know what I mean? He needs one way in. So later on down, he talks about Lucy gonna fill your pockets. Lucy gonna move your mama out of Compton inside the gigantic mansion like I promised. Lucy just want your trust and loyalty. Later on, he says, Lucy, don't mind, because at the end of the day, you'll pursue me. All your life I've watched you, and now you're all grown up. Then sign this contract if that's possible. That leads me to, again, you hear a lot of these artists that sold their soul and, because they wanted fame and they wanted fortune on this earth. And there's a lot of people that you see nowadays that pop off and, they act like they got all this money. They're in this nice house. They're driving all this and they're driving those cars. They're surrounded by a lot of women. They have a bunch of chains on, etc. Right? That's the image that we're getting from a lot of these artists, right? But this guy subliminally, I think he's talking about Lucifer, right? Because if you're gonna sign this contract and make a pact it's because, like you said, you're struggling. You're trying to get your mama out of Compton. You're trying to get your mom out the hood. You want to be in a nice house. You want to make this money. and you want to be successful, right?
Yeah.
So we got to be careful because you might be reading that or listening to that or singing it,
Yep.
and little by little, you're like, man, maybe I should sell some dope. Maybe I should, act like this or act, I see it all the time driving through where I used to live. And it's like, this dude is still living here acting like,
Yeah.
he got something going on, but he's just influenced by the culture. And he's still out here broke.
Yeah. To stick with the same lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, again, we talk about how deep these lyrics can get, but we still don't care. Oftentimes we're like, Jay-Z said murder Jesus. Okay. This guy's talking about Lucifer. Why don't we care enough? Like that's one of my questions. All right, why don't we care enough to be like, yo, I would not. I guarantee you, if you saw a movie or if you saw Lucifer up in your room, you would care.
You'd be shook.
That'd be different, you know? So, and that's just like the genres that we've listened to. I never really got into like heavy metal and and what's the other, like the Mexican music, the rancheras and what is it called? Corridos. Yeah, I never got into that, right? So I'm sure they also sing about similar stuff.
Of course.
And more demonic and
it's just the same thing. At the end of the day, like there's gonna be music that talks about everything, man. There's nowadays you find music about dealers, whether it's English or Spanish, people that are selling in the street and the ones who are making it, that they all have their songs for it. When it talks about women sleeping with them, promoting them, running a business, like all this stuff is always out there. There's nothing that nowadays is like, oh no, let's not touch that subject. Nowadays they touch every subject in music, and for us to say like, oh, I listen to one but I don't listen to the other, I feel like that's the we're trying to draw lines where there's no lines.
Right.
One thing that I learned a long time ago was that, the light and the darkness have nothing to do with each other. So the tough part is this, like, as Christians, should we be trying to make lines or draw more lines? Saying, well, this one's kind of grayish, it's like, oh, it's a different shade.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not as dark as others. I feel like sometimes that's where we start making up excuses for ourselves, and we leave ourselves vulnerable to opening doors, and really putting ourselves in a position where we're setting ourselves up for else. That's really, let's just call it what it is, because sometimes you're so concerned about trying to stand up for what you may or may not know that is wrong. But because you're so caught up in trying to make your own rules that you miss the fact that you're breaking them, because you're trying to create your own. And I feel like you see it a lot where sometimes it's just music. And I remember growing up, I used to hate when people say, oh, don't listen to that because you're going to end up doing drugs or you're going to end up doing this. And sometimes it's easy for us to like throw responsibility of our own actions to everyone else. It doesn't mean that you listen to a song and all of a sudden you became an addict.
Yeah.
That's not what it means. But it doesn't necessarily take away the fact that it might have influenced you to open that door. And once you opened it, the addiction just kicked the door down. And
yeah, because I mean, just right now that you were saying that, right? I remember when we did the fasting episode with David. He talked about how he paired his fasting with prayer.
Yeah.
So doing those things helped him grow.
Exactly.
So let's look at it on the other side, right? In the secular world, if an artist all you see he does is smoke a bunch of weed, when you listen to his music, I mean, he's probably smoking a bunch of weed when he's making his music, his records, right? So when you're trying to listen to it, you also want to get high just to put yourself in that state and be like, oh yeah, now I'm vibing, I'm chilling, So little by little, I've never personally, and maybe we're getting a little sidetracked, but never really felt like I never did drugs or drank like that. So it's like, I don't know if I have the best view on it, but everybody was like, "Oh, weed is a gateway drug." I'm like,
You're like,
I don't think so, but I
don't
never
have
did it like that. So
I don't
I'm
have an
like, I don't
opinion,
know.
exactly.
Yeah. So, but let's be honest. Like, if you're maybe eventually once it doesn't get you high anymore, you're gonna try something else,
Exactly.
or because you start hanging out around with other people, you start opening those doors, like we said, and it leads into you trying other things, and now you start doing it weekly on the weekends, or eventually it's gonna lead to other things, right?
Yeah.
And just to bring it back on the music subject, we're reciting these lines and these lyrics that some are subliminal, some are direct. We don't know what spiritual doors those are opening.
Exactly.
Like, again, I from the times that I listened to secular music, like I never was possessed, but maybe someone did, right? Someone who did go to a concert or several concerts or whatever. You never know if you've opened those doors and let the enemy walk in, demons and whatever else. You know what I mean? Because you started messing with other and heavier things. Because one artist wasn't doing it, wasn't giving you that satisfaction anymore. So you started messing with heavier things. And I think that's where we want to take this too, right? And talk about like more spiritual things as far as like demon possession. And I haven't personally been possessed. I don't know about you, but I do know, of people.
Not as far as I'm concerned,
Like I haven't crawled on no walls or anything like that.
Nothing like that.
But I know that we know a lot of people who have dealt with stuff like that, and again, we're just trying to bring awareness to this whole thing, right?
And one of the things that I want to kind of like piggyback off what you're saying, right? I want to bring awareness to not just demon possession itself, right? Because people are like, "Oh no, demon possession, you're sizing it," It's hard for you to put up a fight with the enemy when you don't know the weapons of the enemy.
Right.
It's important for you to know that there's a difference between evil spirits, demons, right? Principalities. There's a whole variety of things that we have to fight spiritually on a daily basis. And sometimes we're over here saying, no, but I'm not demon possessed. If I was, then it'd be different. Well, just because you're not fighting that battle doesn't mean that you can't be held captive by something else that's kind of reigning in your life. The reality is that you made mentions that weed can be a gateway drug, whatever. But what if music is a gateway for other sexual activities that you're doing, right? Or what if the music itself is surrounding you with a different type of friendships, friends that aren't necessarily Christ-like, right? Who don't have the same mindset that you have. Now you're surrounding yourself just because you like this music in a certain group. Listen to it. Let's call it what it is. The people listening to rap are not the ones listening to rancheras, right? People who are listening to corridos, they're not the ones listening to bachata. It's not the same people. Mm-hmm. The type of music that you listen to is going to determine the type of people you're going to surround yourself with, right? And sometimes when we're going to school, when we're going to work, we don't necessarily be like, oh, what are you listening to? Sometimes you have no choice on who you work with or who's in your environment. However, conversations can be led in a different direction once you start relating to the things that you like. And we talked about how sometimes it's cultural, right? You start to identify yourself with a certain culture identity. All of a sudden, you become friends. Well, I'm not sure that I can relate with everyone else in this company, but I'm going to hang out with this one person. Well, guess what? This one person who's always listening to the same music, they're always getting high. So whenever you're hanging out, he's smoking one. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to start smoking it with him, but the temptation is now there.
Right.
In
now you put yourself in a
position to stumble and to fall and perhaps eventually end up getting high with that person just to hang out with them. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a lot more that goes with it that sometimes we tend to put off. And sometimes we get into this into this what is it, to this moods, or we get into this into our feelings, and we don't know what's inside into this and what's making us feel this way. But sometimes when you start feeling like you're getting depressed, or you're having suicidal thoughts, or you feel like you just hate everyone and you just can't get along with anybody, or you feel like you're the one that's being hated and nobody likes you and all this other stuff, like so many thoughts that start going into your head, that sometimes it can just be music leading you to feel that way.
Right.
Or sometimes, like I said, it could be the positions that you're putting yourself because of the music that you're choosing to listen to. So there's so much more that when it comes to identifying all these open doors and identifying all these things that are kind of hindering what God wants to do in your life, it's important to kind of pinpoint where the root is, In one thing that I was talking with a couple of friends over the weekend is like, sometimes we're taught like, oh, you have to, as long as you pull it out by the root, you're good, but just make sure that it's from the root. But one thing that I told them is like, it's not always enough to remove a plant by root, taking it off the roots, because all plants have seeds. And if they dropped fruit that was no good, but it fell around, if you don't clean all that up and you let it linger, eventually, guess what? It's going to start happening again. I remember not that long ago, my kids, the wife and everyone, they went to the pumpkin patch and they brought pumpkins home and they left them outside, never did nothing with them. Right? They just stayed out there. Eventually, the thing started falling apart. And I guess someone must have like washed it off with the hose. But by the time it got to like where the flower beds were and everything, now we have pumpkins growing everywhere. No intentions of growing any garden. I don't want to garden in the front of my house. Like there was no plans, right? But now you have stuff that's growing all over the front of the house for no reason. Why? Because the seed was just left. The actual pumpkin was just left. It fell apart. Seeds ended up in the soil. And because it was good soil with the seed that was never wanted, now you have pumpkins growing all over your front yard. Why would I want pumpkins in my front yard? You understand what I'm saying? But it's just the fact that sometimes we think that we're doing enough, but it's not enough. And sometimes when we realize maybe it's enough, maybe it's not, the fact that you're not diligent to remove it completely, things start to grow in your front yard that you just don't want.
And it wasn't like the next day.
Exactly.
Right. It took time. So that's why, right now that you were saying something, it reminded me, a lot of times when someone goes to evangelize or something like that, even with a non-believer, right, that they let you pray for them or they let you share something with them, you always hear somebody say like the seed was planted, right? Because maybe, who knows, in a year, 2 years, and a few months, and a couple years, you'll see them, right? Yeah. Because that seed was planted. And then it's not us doing the work, but it's the Holy Spirit doing the work. And it takes time. Eventually, they'll come around, or they might be more open to hearing more and learning more. But it's the same the other way too.
Yeah.
If more than anything, I was thinking like, why, if we're clean spiritually, like why do we even want to associate ourselves with that and get our minds dirty?
Yeah.
Or, get our emotions dirty and things like that. Like why even try to associate, why put ourselves in that position to allow to be tempted, to allow ourselves to imagine certain things, and not have control over that, self-control, really.
Yeah.
Right. Again, is it because we just simply, we know better, but we just don't want to?
Yeah.
We got to be real with ourselves.
And obviously, I mean, I know we're coming to an end here. A lot of the stuff that we're going to have to get into in the next episode and the ones that are coming is, how do we really identify that, But I can tell you this. If you feel like there's things that you're running into, like sexual immorality, if you are feeling depressed, if you are getting suicidal thoughts, if you are always feeling like you're left alone and that no one's really caring about you, like there's nobody there that loves you, and you're not feeling like you're loved, or you feel like you don't love anybody, when you feel like you're stuck in a lifestyle where promiscuity is like something that just comes naturally, these are all behaviors that need liberation.
Mm.
These are not things that you can just be like, oh, I prayed and I asked for forgiveness. That's the beginning of it, right? You've identified and you admitted that you have a problem, but that's only the beginning of it. You still have to be able to be liberated from these things to be able to change your lifestyle and to get away from it completely. If you're going to sit under the idea that, oh, just because I asked for forgiveness, now I'm good, Try telling someone who has a heroin addiction, oh, I prayed about it and asked for forgiveness because I let all my friends and family down. I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm good now. There's going to be a process of being cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just say that like, the whole rehabilitation process, it takes time, just like we said, right? So at the end of the day, like, it's important for all of us to make sure that we don't take these things lightly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to dive into it a little bit more. And again, identifying those things and also being aware of the doors or the portals, if you want to talk about it like, or think about it like that, that it could open, right? Potentially open. And just being aware so you don't put yourself in harm's way or
Yeah.
you know, be at risk, right? To allow more issues into your life. Obviously, we appreciate you guys always tuning in and sticking with us. We hope that this is blessing you as much as it's blessing us. And please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
The next one.
Deuces.